Quit acting like you're some big entrepreneur, my sister said at family dinner. That little online thing you do isn't a real business. Everyone laughed. I just nodded and said, got it. Monday morning, I messaged my investment team, take the $150 million out of Sarah's tech company. The board called an emergency meeting. You know that gut-wrenching feeling when someone you love, someone who should have your back, utterly dismantles you in front of everyone? Well, that was me, watching my own sister casually torch my life's work at a family dinner. What she didn't know was that her casual cruelty was about to unravel her entire world. The wine glass was still halfway to my lips when Teresa started in. My older sister, she's always had this uncanny ability to hijack any family conversation, her voice slicing through the room like a perfectly aimed dart. Oh, stop playing pretend entrepreneur, she said, looking right at me with that condescending smirk she's perfected since we were kids. Your little online thing isn't real business. The dining room went completely silent. Dad's fork clinked against his plate, a tiny, amplified sound in the sudden stillness. Mom squirmed in her chair, a picture of discomfort. And then Gregory, Teresa's husband, snorted into his napkin. My blood ran cold. I mean, come on, Teresa pressed on, warming up to her favorite subject, how much better she and Gregory were than me. You just sit at home in pajamas, clicking on a computer. Real business people wear suits. They have fancy offices. They have employees you can actually see. Gregory, of course, nodded along enthusiastically. He owned some big commercial real estate firm, wore expensive suits, drove a Tesla. Teresa, she ran a tech startup, Next Gen Solutions, that was apparently making waves in the app development space. They lived in this glass and steel mansion with a pool and a 3-car garage. Me? I had a modest apartment downtown, and yeah, I worked on my laptop. How much did you make this year? She asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. From your little online thing? The whole table leaned in. Mom looked like she wanted to evaporate. Dad cleared his throat, but stayed quiet. My younger cousin, Amanda, giggled nervously. I do all right, I said, my voice barely a whisper. All right? Teresa scoffed, as if the word itself was offensive. You're 32 years old, and Mom told me you still have student loans. Meanwhile, I'm expanding to 3 new markets next quarter. We just hired 15 new developers. Teresa, honey, Mom tried to interject, but my sister just waved her off. No, Mom. Someone has to say it. She needs to hear this. You're not helping her by pretending her little side hustle is equivalent to what Gregory and I do. It's just not the same. Gregory, my wonderful brother-in-law, leaned back, enjoying the show. What's your revenue? Do you even have revenue? I just stared at my plate. The salmon Mom had cooked so lovingly now looked absolutely disgusting. See? Teresa crowed triumphantly. She can't even answer. That's because there's nothing to answer. Playing around on the internet isn't building a business. It's a hobby that might make you a few $100 a month if you're lucky. The entire table was staring at me now. Aunt Linda, Uncle Wayne, my 3 cousins. All of them just waiting. I folded my napkin very carefully and placed it beside my plate. Understood. Teresa blinked. What? I understand what you're saying, I repeated, meeting her gaze. You're right. I should probably think about getting a real job. The look of smug satisfaction that spread across her face made my stomach churn. Finally, some sense, she gushed. Gregory actually mentioned his company might need an administrative assistant. It wouldn't be glamorous, but it would be steady income. Real income. That's very generous, I said, standing up. Thank you for dinner, Mom. It was delicious. I should go. Mom looked distressed. Honey, you don't have to leave. I have work tomorrow, I said, kissing her cheek. Early morning. I grabbed my coat. As I headed for the door, Teresa called out, think about what I said. It's never too late to join the real world. I drove home in silence. My hands didn't shake. My eyes didn't water. I felt absolutely nothing, which was somehow worse than rage or hurt. It was just this crushing numbness. My apartment was quiet when I got back. I made some tea and sat at my desk, staring at the 3 monitors that pretty much took over my workspace. The little online thing Teresa had mocked so thoroughly. What Teresa didn't know, what I'd never told my family, was that my little online thing was actually Crimson Capital, a venture capital firm I'd built from scratch over the past 8 years. I'd started small, investing my own money from a software patent I'd sold when I was 24. That patent? It netted me $12 million. I used it to build something real. Something very real. Crimson Capital now managed assets worth $890 million. We had silent stakes in 43 companies across tech, healthcare, and renewable energy. I kept my name off everything. My partners were the public faces, handling the media, while I operated in the background, analyzing deals and making investment decisions. And here's the kicker. One of those 43 companies? Next Gen Solutions. Teresa's tech startup. She had no idea. When NextGen was seeking Series B funding 2 years ago, my team had brought the opportunity to me. The app development platform showed promise. The numbers looked solid. I approved a $150 million investment, which gave Crimson Capital a 38% stake in the company. Teresa thought her funding had come from some anonymous consortium of investors she'd never met. She signed the papers, celebrated with champagne, and never bothered to dig into the actual ownership structure. Gregory had been so proud, bragging to everyone about how his wife had attracted major Silicon Valley money. That major Silicon Valley money was currently sitting in her apartment drinking tea and staring at investment portfolios. I opened my laptop and pulled up the next-gen files. The company was doing well enough. Revenue was up. User acquisition was steady. They were burning through cash at a reasonable rate for a company their size. The deal to expand into 3 new markets that Teresa had just mentioned at dinner? It was solid planning. But Crimson Capital owned 38%. And according to the shareholder agreement, any investor with more than 35% ownership had the right to call for a full board review and restructuring if they felt leadership wasn't serving the company's best interests. I'd never exercised that right. I'd let Teresa run her company the way she saw fit. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Asterisk, I'm sorry about tonight. Teresa shouldn't have said those things. Asterisk, I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my email and started typing to Jonathan Reeves, managing partner, Crimson Capital. Subject, Next Gen Solutions. Immediate action required. From Natalie Morrison, founder Crimson Capital. Time sent, Sunday, 11:47 p.m. Jonathan, asterisk, pull our entire position from Next Gen Solutions, effective immediately. Exercise our contractual right to call an emergency board meeting for Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. I'll be attending in person. Prepare documentation for full investment withdrawal. We're liquidating our stake, asterisk, I hit send and closed my laptop. Then I went to bed and slept better than I had in months. Monday was a blur of preparation. Jonathan called at 7 in the morning, his voice tight with stress. Are you absolutely certain about this, Natalie? Once we file the notice, there's no walking it back quietly. I'm certain. The board members are scrambling, he sighed. Teresa called me 6 times yesterday evening. She's panicking. Good. I've scheduled the meeting for tomorrow morning. Everyone confirmed attendance. They know this is serious. I spent the day reviewing every document related to the next-gen investment. The shareholder agreement that Teresa had signed without carefully reading. The one where Crimson Capital was listed clearly, but nested within a complex LLC structure that completely obscured my personal involvement. It was legal. It was intentional. And it had worked exactly as designed, keeping my identity separate from my investments, until now. Tuesday morning arrived, gray skies and a cold wind. I dressed carefully. Navy suit, crisp white blouse, heels that added 3 inches to my height. My hair went up in a professional twist. Diamond studs in my ears, the only jewelry I wore. I looked like money because I had money. The emergency board meeting was set for NextGen's downtown offices, the fancy space Teresa had leased in a high-rise with a view of the river. I arrived at 8:45 a.m. and took the elevator to the 16th floor. The receptionist looked startled when I walked in. Can I help you? I'm here for the board meeting. Conference room B. I'm sorry, but that meeting is closed. I'm aware it's closed. I'm Natalie Morrison from Crimson Capital. I called the meeting. Her eyes widened. 1 moment, please. She picked up her phone and spoke in hushed, urgent tones. 30 seconds later, a man in his 50s emerged from the hallway. Nathan Cross, NextGen's CFO. I'd reviewed his employment contract personally when he was hired. Ms. Morrison. He extended his hand. This is unexpected. We weren't aware you'd be attending personally. I don't usually attend in person, I said, shaking his hand. But today's circumstances warrant it. He led me down the hallway to the conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see people already assembled, board members I recognized from their files, 2 venture partners from other firms, and Teresa sitting at the head of the table, looking confident and completely unprepared. I walked in. Every head turned. Teresa's eyes met mine. Confusion flickered across her face. Natalie, what are you doing here? I'm here for the board meeting. I took a seat directly across from her. This is a board meeting for Next Gen Solutions. You're not. She stopped. Something in my expression must have registered. What's going on? Nathan Cross took his seat. Ms. Morrison is the founding partner of Crimson Capital. Crimson Capital holds the largest minority stake in Next Gen Solutions. The color drained from Teresa's face. What? Your Series B funding? I said calmly. The $150 million that allowed you to expand operations, hire your development team, and lease this beautiful office space? That money came from my firm. Teresa looked like she'd been slapped. That's not possible. The investment came from a consortium. I never saw your name on any documents. You didn't look carefully enough, I replied. Crimson Capital is listed in your shareholder agreement. We structured the investment through an LLC to maintain privacy, but the documentation was clear. Page 7, Section 3, Subsection V. I opened my briefcase, pulled out a copy, and slid it across the table. You might want to review it. Her hands shook as she picked up the document. I watched her eyes scan the page, searching for proof that I was lying. She found my company's name instead, nested in the legal structure she'd signed without thorough review. You've been my investor for 2 years, she whispered, her voice cracking. You never said anything. You never asked what I actually did for a living. You were too busy explaining to everyone how I didn't have a real business. Nathan Cross cleared his throat. Ms. Morrison has exercised her right under the shareholder agreement to call for this emergency meeting. She's indicated an intention to liquidate Crimson Capital's full position. The other board members shifted uncomfortably. One of them, Rachel Kim from Silverton Partners, spoke up. A full liquidation? That's a significant move. Can you elaborate on your reasoning? I kept my eyes on Teresa. I've lost confidence in current leadership. I don't believe the CEO has the judgment necessary to guide this company through its next phase of growth. That's absurd. Teresa exploded, finally finding her voice. You're doing this because I hurt your feelings at a family dinner. This is completely unprofessional. What's unprofessional is dismissing someone's career without knowing anything about it, I replied, my voice steady. What's unprofessional is mocking your own sister at a family gathering because you assumed she was unsuccessful. But this decision has nothing to do with my feelings, Teresa. This is purely business. You can't just pull $150 million out of a company because I said something you didn't like. Actually, I can, I said, my voice ice cold. And I am. I opened my laptop and pulled up the financial projections. NextGen has burned through $89 million of the original investment. You have $61 million remaining in operational funds. The company's valuation has grown to approximately $475 million based on your revenue growth and market position. Crimson Capital's 38% stake is currently valued at approximately $180 million. I'll be divesting that stake through a structured buyout that won't crater the company, but it will leave you scrambling for replacement funding. Rachel Kim leaned forward. Who's going to purchase that stake? Moving $180 million isn't something you do overnight. I have 3 interested buyers already lined up. They'll want board seats. They'll want voting rights. And they'll want significant say in operational decisions. I looked at Teresa. Your autonomy as CEO is about to become much more limited. Nathan Cross was typing rapidly on his tablet. If we lose Crimson Capital and bring in new investors with board seats, we'll need to restructure completely. The expansion plans would have to be delayed. Possibly indefinitely. That's what happens when you build a company on someone else's money, I said. You play by their rules. Teresa's jaw clenched. You're sabotaging my company to prove a point. I'm withdrawing my investment because I don't trust your leadership, I corrected her. There's a difference. I closed my laptop. You spent yesterday evening explaining to our entire family that I don't understand real business. You said I'm playing pretend. You offered to get me a job as an administrative assistant. The room was dead silent. Here's what you don't understand, Teresa. While you were building one company with money you raised from investors, I was building a portfolio of 43 companies. I have stakes in everything from AI healthcare platforms to renewable energy startups. Last year, Crimson Capital's returns were 42%. My personal net worth is approximately $340 million. Teresa looked like she might actually be sick. So, when you talk about real business, I continued, remember that I've been operating at a level you haven't even imagined yet. You got lucky with one successful app platform. Congratulations. I've been making calculated investment decisions that shape entire market sectors. Rachel Kim was staring at me with newfound respect. You're that Natalie Morrison? From the Crimson Capital that backed Nova Medical Systems and Helix Energy Solutions and Cascade Analytics, among others. Those were billion-dollar companies. They are now, I affirmed. They weren't when I invested. Teresa's hands were flat on the table, like she was trying to ground herself. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let everyone think you were struggling? Because I don't need my family's validation. I don't need to prove anything to Dad or Mom or Aunt Linda or anyone else. I know what I've built. I know what I'm capable of. I stood up. But you decided to humiliate me publicly, and I won't tolerate that. Not from anyone. Natalie, please, Teresa's voice cracked. Don't do this. We can talk about this privately. We're past that. I paused. Jonathan Reeves from my office will handle the transition details. You'll have 90 days to secure replacement funding before the buyout is finalized. I suggest you start making calls. I picked up my briefcase and walked toward the door. You're destroying everything I worked for. Teresa called after me. I turned back. No, I'm removing my support from someone who doesn't respect me. You'll survive this. Your company might even thrive under new leadership. But you'll do it without my help, and you'll remember what it cost you. I left the conference room and walked past the stunned receptionist. The elevator doors closed on NextGen Solutions, on Teresa's shocked face, on the board members scrambling to understand what had just happened. My phone started buzzing before I even reached the lobby. Mom, Dad, Aunt Linda. I ignored all of them. The drive back to my apartment took 20 minutes through downtown traffic. I kept the radio off, preferring silence to process what had just happened. Part of me felt utterly vindicated. The look on Teresa's face when she realized who I actually was? That moment of pure shock had been worth 8 years of family dinners where I'd been treated like the unsuccessful younger sister. But another part of me felt hollow, empty, like I'd just burned down a bridge I might need someday. I parked in my building's garage and took the elevator to the 14th floor. My apartment felt different somehow when I walked in. The same furniture, the same view of the city, the same desk with 3 monitors displaying market data. But something had shifted. My laptop pinged with an incoming email. Jonathan Reeves again. Subject, NextGen situation. Media inquiries. Natalie, *, we're already getting calls from Tech Business Weekly and the Silicon Report asking about the NextGen divestment. I've stonewalled them for now, but this is going to be a story. How do you want me to handle it? Also, Rachel Kim from Silverton Partners called. She wants to discuss potentially taking over part of our stake. She seemed very interested in working with you directly on future deals. Let me know your strategy here. I stared at the email. The business world moved fast. What had happened in that conference room an hour ago was already rippling outward, creating opportunities and problems in equal measure. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Not mom or dad this time. The caller ID showed a number I recognized. Lawrence Brennan, CEO of Cascade Analytics, one of my most successful portfolio companies. Lawrence, I answered. What can I do for you, Natalie? I heard through the grapevine about what happened at NextGen this morning. Is everything all right? Word traveled impossibly fast in the investment community. Everything's fine. Just a routine restructuring. Pulling $150 million is routine? His voice was skeptical, but not unkind. Look, I don't mean to pry into your business, but Cascade has benefited enormously from your guidance over the past 4 years. If there's instability at Crimson Capital, I need to know. There's no instability. This was a singular situation involving personal circumstances that won't be repeated. Personal circumstances. He let those words hang in the air. I see. Well, I trust your judgment. You've never steered me wrong. But Natalie, and I'm saying this as someone who considers you a friend, not just an investor, be careful. Mixing personal and professional rarely ends well. I appreciate the concern. Good luck. And if you need to talk, I'm here. After he hung up, I sat down at my desk and opened the NextGen files again. Teresa's company was solid. The technology was sound. The team was competent. The market opportunity was real. Everything about it screamed good investment, except for one factor. The CEO had publicly humiliated me. Was that enough reason to torpedo a $170 million stake? My email pinged again, this time from someone unexpected. Nathan Cross, NextGen CFO. Subject, confidential discussion request. Miss Morrison, I hope this message finds you well. After this morning's board meeting, I feel compelled to reach out directly. I've worked with Teresa for 18 months now. She's brilliant, driven, and has built something genuinely innovative. She's also young, sometimes arrogant, and occasionally lacks the emotional intelligence that separates good CEOs from great ones. What happened between you two is none of my business, but I have a company full of employees who depend on NextGen's success for their livelihoods. Families counting on this company to survive. I'm asking you to reconsider your decision. Not for Teresa's sake, but for theirs. If there's any possibility of finding a resolution that doesn't involve liquidating Crimson's position, I would be deeply grateful for the opportunity to discuss it respectfully. Nathan Cross. I read the email 3 times. Nathan was right. NextGen had a substantial workforce, depending on the company's stability. Engineers, designers, sales staff, support teams. People with mortgages and car payments and kids in college. None of them had anything to do with what Teresa said at a family dinner. My actions would affect all of them. The realization settled over me like cold water. I'd been so focused on Teresa, on my anger and hurt, that I hadn't fully considered the broader impact. Pulling my investment wouldn't just damage my sister. It would send shockwaves through an entire organization. I picked up my phone and called Jonathan. He answered on the first ring. Tell me honestly, I said without preamble. Am I making a mistake? Do you want my professional opinion or my personal one? Both. Professionally, pulling out of a performing investment because of personal conflict is questionable at best. It sets a precedent that Crimson Capital makes decisions based on emotion rather than data. That's not good for our reputation. And personally, I understand why you're angry. What your sister said was cruel and dismissive. You had every right to be hurt. But Natalie, you've built something extraordinary over the past 8 years. Don't let one bad family dinner destroy what you've created. Not just Crimson Capital, but your relationship with your sister. She destroyed that relationship when she decided to humiliate me. Did she? Or did she just make a mistake born of ignorance? His voice was gentle. I'm not defending what she said, but from what you told me, she genuinely didn't know what you do. She thought she was giving advice to someone who was struggling. That doesn't make it okay. No, it doesn't. But it makes it human. People say stupid things. They make assumptions. They hurt each other without meaning to. He paused. The question is, what kind of person do you want to be? Someone who wields power like a weapon when you're hurt, or someone who uses power responsibly, even when it's hard? I closed my eyes. You're supposed to be on my side. I am on your side. That's why I'm telling you this. After we hung up, I spent the rest of the afternoon wrestling with a decision. I pulled up financial models, reviewed investment theses, analyzed market conditions. Everything I looked at confirmed that NextGen was a solid company with strong fundamentals. Everything except my wounded pride. The fallout was immediate and brutal. By Wednesday morning, word had spread through the family about what had happened. Mom called 17 times. I finally answered on the 18th. Natalie, what have you done? She asked, her voice strained. I withdrew my investment from a company. That's all. That's all? Teresa is devastated. She's been crying for hours. Gregory called your father, saying you sabotaged them out of spite. I made a business decision based on my assessment of leadership quality. Your sister's. How could you hurt her like this? The question made something sharp twist in my chest. How could she hurt me like she did in front of the whole family? She didn't know what you actually did for work, Mom insisted. She thought she was giving you advice. She thought she was superior to me. She thought I was pathetic. And instead of asking questions or showing interest in my life, she decided to publicly humiliate me. My voice stayed level. I don't owe her my financial support, Mom, especially not after how she treated me. But $150 million, Natalie. You're putting her entire company at risk. She'll find other investors. She has a solid product. She'll land on her feet. Will she? Mom's voice broke. Your father is worried she might lose everything. Then maybe she'll learn something about making assumptions. I hung up before Mom could respond. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off. Wednesday brought another wave of consequences. Teresa went to the press. An article appeared in TechPulse about internal conflict at NextGen Solutions. She didn't name me specifically, but she talked about personal conflicts with investors that were threatening the company's stability. The business community started talking. My phone, when I turned it back on, was full of messages from other portfolio companies wondering if I was unstable, if I made investment decisions based on personal grudges, if their funding was secure. I spent Tuesday afternoon on damage control calls. Lawrence from Cascade Analytics wasn't the only CEO who'd heard rumors. Helix Energy Solutions wanted reassurance. Nova Medical Systems requested an emergency call with their board. Even small portfolio companies that represented less than 1% of Crimson's assets were suddenly nervous. I need you to understand something, I told David Zhang, CEO of Helix Energy. What happened with NextGen is an isolated incident involving unique personal circumstances. Your company's funding is completely secure. Crimson Capital's investment in Helix has always been based on your technology, your team, and your market potential. Nothing about that has changed. But you pulled $150 million from a successful company over what people are saying was a family argument, David said carefully. That makes investors nervous, Natalie. It makes us wonder if our funding depends on keeping you personally happy rather than hitting our business milestones. The words stunned me because they were fair. I understand your concern, and I'm going to be transparent with you in a way I haven't been with most people. My sister is NextGen CEO. She didn't know I was her primary investor. The situation that unfolded was complicated by family dynamics that have nothing to do with how I evaluate business performance. There was a long silence. Your sister runs NextGen? And she didn't know you were backing her company. I keep my involvement in portfolio companies confidential. Always have. It allows me to make objective decisions without personal relationships clouding my judgment. Until those personal relationships blow up in your face, David said, not unkindly. I get it now. That's a complicated situation, but it doesn't change the fact that you made an emotional decision that's affecting your reputation. Our investors are already asking questions about Crimson's stability. What do you need from me to reassure them? Fix the situation with your sister. Show the community that you can handle personal conflict without nuking business relationships. Because right now, the narrative is that you're vindictive and unpredictable. That's not the Natalie Morrison I've known for 3 years. After that call ended, I sat staring at my monitors for a long time. The market data scrolled past, meaningless numbers and charts that usually brought me clarity. But clarity felt impossible to find. My apartment doorbell rang that evening around 7. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I checked the video intercom, I saw Gregory standing in the hallway. Great. This should be fun. I buzzed him up and opened the door before he could knock. If you're here to yell at me, get it over with. He stepped inside, looking incredibly uncomfortable in my space. Gregory rarely visited my apartment. I suspected he'd always found it too modest, too unglamorous for his taste. I'm not here to yell, he said quietly. Teresa doesn't know I'm here. Can we talk? I gestured to the living room couch. He sat down, looking around at my simple furniture, my minimal decorations. His eyes landed on the view of the city through the windows. Nice view, he said. It's adequate. Natalie, I'm going to say something and I need you to hear me out before you respond. He leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. What Teresa said at that dinner was completely out of line. I should have stopped her. I should have defended you. Instead, I laughed along with everyone else, and I'm ashamed of that. I hadn't expected this. Okay. Teresa told me everything after the board meeting yesterday. About Crimson Capital, about your net worth, about how long you've been operating at this level while we all treated you like you were barely scraping by. He shook his head. I've spent 2 years bragging about my wife's success, while you quietly built something 10 times bigger than anything I'll ever accomplish. This isn't a competition, Gregory. Isn't it though? That's what families do. We compare. We measure success against each other. And somewhere along the way, we decided you were at the bottom of that hierarchy. He met my eyes. We were wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Why are you telling me this? Because Teresa is falling apart. She's barely sleeping. She's convinced she's going to lose the company. But more than that, she's convinced she's lost you, her sister. And watching her spiral is making me realize how badly we all failed you. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. Lights beginning to glow in the dusk. She dismissed my entire career in front of our family. She made me feel worthless. I know. And she's going to have to live with that. But Natalie, his voice cracked slightly. She's also your sister. The same person who used to walk you to school when you were scared. Who taught you how to drive? Who stayed up all night helping you study for your college entrance exams? I remember all of that. Then remember it means something. You two have history that goes beyond one terrible dinner. And I'm asking you, as someone who loves her, to consider whether destroying her company is really going to make you feel better in the long run. I turned to face him. Why do you care? If NextGen fails, it hurts you too. Your wife's success reflects on you. Isn't that what you wanted? To be married to a successful CEO? He flinched. That's fair. And yes, partly I'm here because NextGen failing would be catastrophic for our family financially. But I'm also here because I've watched Teresa realize what she lost. Not the funding, though that's terrifying enough, but her relationship with you. She's been crying at random moments, staring at old photos from when you were kids, talking about how she took you for granted. Good. Maybe she should feel guilty. She does. Trust me, she does. But guilt doesn't solve anything. It just eats people alive from the inside. Gregory stood up. I'm not asking you to pretend nothing happened. I'm asking you to consider whether there's a version of this situation where you don't lose your sister permanently. After he left, I made tea and sat at my desk, thinking about what he'd said. Old photos. Teresa crying. Our shared history. I thought about the time Teresa stayed up all night helping me study for my college entrance exams. The way she'd threatened to fight anyone who bullied me in middle school. How she brought me soup every day for a week when I had pneumonia at 23. Before the comparison started, before the competition, before we drifted into these roles of successful sister and struggling sister that had never been accurate to begin with. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Asterisk, please talk to your father. He's worried about both of you. Asterisk, I called Dad instead of texting back. He answered immediately. Natalie, he said, relief evident in his voice. Thank God. Your mother has been beside herself. I know. I'm sorry I haven't been responsive. What's going on? Teresa told us some things, but I want to hear your side of it. So, I told him everything. About Crimson Capital, about building my firm in silence, about investing in Teresa's company without her knowledge, about the dinner and what she'd said and how small she'd made me feel. Dad listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. I failed you, he said finally. What? No, Dad. I did. Your mother and I both did. We were so focused on Teresa's visible success that we never bothered to ask what you were actually doing. We assumed you were struggling because you weren't flashy about your accomplishments. We should have known better. We should have known you. My throat tightened. I didn't make it easy, I admitted. I kept everything quiet on purpose. Because we made you feel like you had to, Dad said. Because we created an environment where Teresa's way of doing things, loud, public, progressive, was the only way we recognized success. You found a different path, and instead of celebrating that, we ignored it. I'm not blameless here. What I did to Teresa's company. What you did was react to being hurt. That's human. Maybe not the wisest business decision, but human. He sighed. Teresa is devastated, honey. Not just about the company, though that's part of it. She's devastated that she hurt you so badly. She called me this morning and spent an hour crying about how she destroyed your relationship. She should have thought about that before she decided to humiliate me. You're absolutely right. She should have. But people make mistakes. Stupid, hurtful mistakes. The question is whether you can find a way to forgive her, even if you can't forget what happened. After we hung up, I sat in the darkening apartment thinking about forgiveness and revenge, and what I actually wanted from this situation. Did I want Teresa to suffer? Did I want her to lose everything she'd built? Or did I just want her to see me? Really see me, not as the little sister or the struggling entrepreneur, but as an equal, as someone worthy of respect. My laptop was still open to NextGen's financial files. I pulled up the employee roster and started reading through names and positions. Engineers who'd probably moved across the country for this job. Recent graduates in their first positions. Parents and spouses and people trying to build careers. Over 140 people whose livelihoods depended on the company's stability. Jonathan called Wednesday morning. We need to have a conversation. Go ahead. The other partners are concerned. What happened with NextGen is raising questions about your judgment. My judgment is fine. You pulled $150 million from a performing company because your sister insulted you at dinner. That's not fine, Natalie. That's petty. The word hit harder than I expected. She didn't just insult me. She tried to make me feel worthless in front of my entire family. And now you've proven you have the power to destroy her career. Point made. But the cost might be her reputation. I stared at my monitors. The numbers and charts and data points that had been my whole world for 8 years. What do you want me to do? Talk to her. Work something out. Show the business community that you're not someone who lets personal feelings drive investment decisions. Even though that's exactly what I did. Even though that's exactly what you did, Jonathan confirmed. Fix this, Natalie, or Crimson Capital's reputation is going to suffer. He was right. I hated that he was right, but he was. I drove to Teresa's house Friday evening. The glass and steel structure looked less impressive in the fading light, more vulnerable somehow. Gregory answered the door. His face was hostile. You've got a lot of nerve showing up here. I need to talk to Teresa. She doesn't want to see you. Gregory, please. Just let me talk to her. He stared at me for a long moment, then stepped aside. Living room. Don't make this worse. Teresa was sitting on the couch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her eyes were red. No makeup. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked exhausted. Hi, I said quietly. Come to finish the job? Her voice was hoarse. No, I came to talk. There's nothing to say. You made your point. I'm a terrible sister who underestimated you. You're rich and powerful, and I'm an idiot. Congratulations. I sat down in the chair across from her. You're not an idiot. I didn't recognize that my own sister was the investor keeping my company alive. That makes me pretty stupid. Or it makes me very good at staying anonymous. She laughed bitterly. Why did you hide it? Why didn't you ever tell us what you actually do? Because I didn't want this. I gestured between us. I didn't want family dynamics mixed up with business. I didn't want dad asking for investment advice or mom worrying about risk. Were you feeling competitive? Well, that worked out great. We sat in silence. Outside, a car drove past. Inside, a clock ticked somewhere in the house. I spent the last week trying to find replacement funding, Teresa said finally. Nobody wants to touch us. The word is out that Crimson Capital is pulling out. Other investors think there's something wrong with the company. Our valuation is dropping. 2 major clients delayed signing contracts because they're worried about our stability. I know. I've been monitoring the situation. Of course you have. She wiped her eyes. Are you happy? Did this make you feel better? No, I admit it. It didn't. Then why did you do it? The question hung in the air between us. Why had I done it? Because I was angry. Because I was hurt. Because for one moment I wanted Teresa to feel as small as she'd made me feel. Because you made me feel invisible, I said quietly. My whole life, you've been the successful one. The one who knew what she wanted and went after it. The one mom and dad were proud of. I've always been the quiet one in the background. The one nobody really noticed, Natalie. And I was okay with that. I genuinely didn't mind. I built something amazing without needing recognition from the family. But then you decided to tear me down publicly. You decided to make me look foolish and small and unsuccessful in front of everyone I care about, and I couldn't let that stand. Teresa's face crumpled. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I thought I was helping you by offering you a job as an administrative assistant. I thought you were struggling. Mom mentioned student loans, and I just assumed. She stopped. I assumed wrong about everything. I was condescending and mean, and I humiliated you. You're absolutely right to be angry. I looked at her, my sister. The person who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework and cried with me when our grandmother died. Before the competition and the comparison and the distance that had grown between us. I don't want to be angry anymore, I said. But I also don't want to be disrespected. You won't be. I promise. I'll tell the whole family what really happened. I'll make sure everyone knows how successful you are. I don't care about that. I don't need them to know. But I need you to see me as an equal, not as your little sister who needs guidance. As someone who's built something real and valuable. I do, God, I do. You've built something incredible. She looked at me with something like awe. $340 million. That's insane. It's what happens when you work quietly for a long time. And I almost ruined it by running my mouth. We sat there, 2 sisters who'd lost sight of each other somewhere along the way. What happens to NextGen? Teresa asked finally. Are you really going to liquidate your stake? I'd been thinking about this question all week. The business answer was clear. Pull out. Let the company find new investors. Move on. But the human answer was more complicated. I'll give you a choice, I said. Option 1, I sell my stake to new investors. They'll bring fresh capital, but they'll want control. You'll lose autonomy. Option 2, Crimson Capital maintains its position, but you bring in a professional COO to handle operations while you focus on product development. Someone with experience scaling companies. And you'll report quarterly directly to me. Option 2 means you'd still be involved? Yes. After everything I said, after how I treated you? We're sisters, I said. That has to mean something. Teresa's eyes filled with tears. Why would you do that? Why would you help me after what I did? Because destroying your company doesn't actually make me feel better. It just makes me feel cruel. And I don't want to be cruel. I want to be successful and respected, yes, but not at the cost of becoming someone I don't recognize. Natalie, I don't deserve this. No, you probably don't. But I'm offering it anyway. She stood up and crossed the space between us, pulling me into a tight hug. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hugged her back, feeling years of distance and tension start to ease. We'll need to rebuild trust. That's going to take time. I'll do whatever it takes. I mean it. Then prove it. Run your company well. Listen to advice. And never, ever assume you know more about someone's life than they do. Deal. The restructuring took 6 weeks. Teresa hired Karen Wu, a veteran COO from the software industry, to handle day-to-day operations. I sat in on the interview personally, asking questions about scaling strategies and team management. Karen was impressive, competent, and unintimidated by Teresa's ego. Perfect. NextGen's board meetings became a regular part of my schedule. I showed up in person once a month, reviewed financials, provided strategic input. Teresa deferred to my advice more often than I expected. She was learning, slowly, to see me as someone worth listening to. The family dinner that December was different. Mom seated me next to Teresa at the table. A deliberate choice. Dad made a toast before the meal. To family. Ahe said, raising his glass. To success in all its forms. And to learning that we don't always know as much as we think we do. He looked directly at Teresa when he said it. She nodded, accepting the gentle rebuke. I want to say something, Teresa announced after the toast. The table quieted. I owe everyone here, but especially Natalie, an apology. A few months ago, I said some incredibly disrespectful things about her career, things that came from my own ignorance and arrogance. She turned to me. Natalie is one of the most successful people I know. She's built a venture capital firm that manages close to $1 billion. She's invested in dozens of companies that are changing industries, and she did it all quietly, without needing recognition or praise from anyone. The table was silent, everyone processing this information. She's also been the primary investor in my company for 2 years, which I was too self-absorbed to realize. And when I disrespected her, she had every right to walk away. The fact that she chose to stay involved, to help me succeed despite my behavior, says everything about her character. Mom was crying softly. Dad looked proud and slightly stunned. So, I want to say publicly that I was wrong about everything, and I'm grateful to have a sister who's not only brilliant, but also more forgiving than I deserve. The table erupted in a mixture of applause and shocked exclamations. Cousin Amanda demanded to know more about venture capital. Uncle Wayne wanted investment advice. Aunt Linda couldn't stop hugging me. I caught Teresa's eye across the table. She mouthed, "Thank you," and I nodded back. Later, after dinner, Gregory pulled me aside. "What you did for Teresa, giving her another chance. That took real character. I underestimated you too. I'm sorry." Apology accepted. I smiled. "If you're ever looking for real estate investment opportunities, I'd love to pitch you some deals. Send the details to my office. We'll take a look." 6 months later, NextGen closed a major partnership with a Fortune 500 company. The deal put them on the map in a significant way. Teresa called me the moment the contracts were signed. "We did it," she said, her voice jubilant. "This is going to triple our user base. Congratulations. You've earned it. We've earned it. Karen and I couldn't have structured this deal without your input on the strategic framework. That's what investors do. No, that's what good investors do. You could have walked away and let me crash and burn. You chose differently." I looked out my apartment window at the city's skyline. "You're my sister. That choice was always going to be different. I love you. You know that, right? I love you too." After we hung up, I sat at my desk and pulled up Crimson Capital's portfolio overview. 43 companies. 15 of them approaching billion-dollar valuations. Returns that exceeded industry standards by comfortable margins. My little online thing was changing the world, one investment at a time, and nobody had to know my name for it to matter. I opened my email and started reviewing the next potential deal. A biotech startup working on revolutionary cancer treatments. The science looked promising. The team had experience. The financials needed work, but showed potential. I made notes, asked questions, ran projections. By morning, I'd have a decision ready. That's what real business looked like. Not corner offices or expensive suits or public recognition. Just careful analysis, calculated risks, and the patience to build something meaningful over time. Teresa had learned that lesson the hard way. But she had learned it. And somewhere in the process, we'd found our way back to each other. Not as the successful sister and the struggling sister, but as just sisters.